Three American sailors were killed. The ship and its survivors are still on their way to Mediterranean ports. NBC News correspondent Robert Gorowski reports by satellite.
This is the USS Liberty, the Navy ship that was strafed and torn.
Fetzer, your host, right here on RBN Live. Authentic News, this 6th day of May 2025. We got the new teams. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'll give you the stories. Perhaps the most astonishing story I've ever reported. Former housing official. U.S. government has built a $21 trillion underground city for the wealthy and powerful to live if a near-extinction event were to occur. A former housing official recently made the shocking allegation that, if true, will prove the most wasteful and arguably sinister government expenditure of all time. Catherine Austin Fitts, who served as Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development between 1989 and 1990, appeared on former Fox News Tucker Carlson podcast Tuesday, claiming the United States government has spent a whopping $21 billion over several years building an underground city for the rich and famous, the wealthiest and most powerful in the country. To back up her allegation, the 74-year-old Fitts cited a report released by Michigan State University economist Mark Skidmore, where he and his team said in their paper they had discovered $21 trillion in unauthorized spending in both the Department of Defense and Housing and Urban Development from 1998 to 2015. Fitts told Tucker that money was used to develop an underground base, city infrastructure, and transportation system hidden from the entire country. We now have built an extraordinary number of underground bases and supposedly transportation systems. Some of these are documented. Some of these are documented as part of the national security infrastructure. But I think there are many more in the United States and all over the world. Fitts added she and a team of investigators met between 2021 and 23 collecting all the data, all the information on underground bases. She estimated they found roughly 170 in America and under the ocean around America. You wondered where all that money went, why it wasn't going to improve America, our bridges, our roadways, our schools, our hospitals, our medical care, taking care of the homeless. They were building this effing underground world for the rich and powerful. Grotesque. We systematically went through and sought to guesstimate how many underground bases there are, both in the U.S. and under the ocean. In our estimate, it was 170 with a transportation network connecting them. Think about it. I mean, this is staggering. Staggering. And I really don't have any doubt that it's right. Meanwhile, we got a live update. Trump at the White House in the Oval Office, which is completely redecorated. Very strange. I don't want to say it looks like a cat house, but it sure as hell doesn't look right to me. Very, very strange. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Carney rebuffed Trump's push to make Canada the 51st state. Here's a summary. Canada's new PM, Mark Carney, meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office a week after winning the job with a promise to confront the increased aggression shown by Trump. as the two countries struggled to resolve Trump's trade war. The U.S. displayed its unique mix of graciousness and discourtesy. Shortly before Carney arrived, Trump said social media the U.S. didn't need anything from its northern neighbor, a theme he revisited in the Oval Office alongside efforts to show warmth. Meanwhile, admin says those without a real ID can still fly. Travelers aren't real ID compliant by the Wednesday deadline and will still be able to fly, but should be prepared for extra scrutiny, Head of Homeland Security said Tuesday. U.S. is halting airstrikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen. Trump says he's calling off any more airstrikes against the Yemeni Houthis, saying the rebel faction has capitulated and won't attack U.S. shipping. I have no idea what he's claiming here. Very, very strange. Supreme Court allows Trump's ban on transgender troops to take effect. The Supreme Court Tuesday allowed President Trump's administration to enforce a ban on transgenders in the military while legal challenges proceed. The court acted in the dispute over a policy that presumptively disqualifies transgenders from military service. Having spent time in the Marine Corps, being familiar with recruit training and the like, I think that's totally appropriate. Transgenders really don't have a place. Meanwhile, Trump says, and this is reported by the Daily Mail, I don't know if I must uphold the U.S. Constitution. I mean, look, he took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. How can he say such a thing? U.S. President Trump said in remarks aired Sunday he does not know whether he must uphold the Constitution, the nation's founding legal document. In a wide-ranging NBC interview, the 78-year-old Republican also said he was not seriously considering running for a constitutionally banned third term and blamed his presidential successor, Biden, for the bad parts of the current economy. Trump has drawn widespread criticism for repeatedly brushing up against constitutional guardrails since returning to the White House in January, notably over his policy of mass deportation of undocumented migrants, some without the benefits of a court hearing. He insists such rapid expulsions are necessary in the face of what he's declared to be a national emergency, and giving every migrant a court trial would take 300 years. So I think maybe the Daily Mail is not quite reporting it properly. What it should be is he's not sure if due process is in these illegals he's deporting are entitled to due process, which I think is very, very different. Meanwhile, Trump says he wants total dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program. President Trump, in an interview, said he wants, I believe that's the same interview, total dismantlement of Iran's civilian nuclear program, a condition that's a non-starter for Tehran. Total dismantlement, yes. That's all I would accept, Trump said on Meet the Press. Trump suggested he might be open allowing Iran to maintain a civilian nuclear program to produce energy. And I'm just astonished by this because that's all Iran has. That's all it wants. That's all it's ever had. So how can he say might open to allowing Iran to maintain a civil nuclear program when that's all they have? That's what this is all about. Doesn't he understand that? But sounded skeptical of the idea. This is ridiculous. There's a new theory going out there that Iran would be allowed to have civilian, meaning to make electricity. But I say, they have so much oil, what do they need it for? I got to tell you, this is embarrassing to me. This sounds as though the President of the United States has no idea of the most basic facts about the situation with Iran. No idea. And I wouldn't be surprised at all that Bibi Netanyahu had been playing him like a fiddle with all kinds of disruption, false information, stunning stuff. Meanwhile, Trump even threatened sanctions against buyers of Iranian oil after the nuclear talks postponed. Here we go. Trump, this would be last Thursday, threatened sanctions on anyone who buys Iranian oil, warning that came after the planned talks over Tehran's rapidly advancing nuclear program were postponed. Trump wrote on social media, all purchases of Iranian oil or petrochemical process must stop now. He said any country or person who buys those products from Iran will not be able to do business with the United States in any way, shape, or form. He's too ignorant to be making these statements. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm flabbergasted. I am flabbergasted. It was unclear how Trump would implement such a ban as he threatened to levy secondary sanctions on nations that import Iranian oil. But his statement risked further escalating tension with China, Iran's leading customer, at a time when the relationship is severely strained over the president's tariffs. Yes, indeed. Meanwhile, the Iranian lobby suffered an humiliating defeat with the rejection of this proposal to imprison and massively fine those.
Get to this boycotts bill that I know you've been tracking really closely. In fact, Glenn, why don't you go ahead and set up what this bill was meant to do? Because it is unfortunately in line with some other legislation that has previously been passed into law. Seemed like it had a head of steam, co-sponsored by Mike Lawler and Josh Gottheimer. So you had bipartisan support. And yet it ended up being, at least for now, they pulled the vote and looks like AIPAC may take a rare L on this one.
Yeah, I think that, like, if I just give the brief historical context, I think it's so interesting and so important.
Yeah.
Which is, you know how there was this like whole industry of quote unquote anti-woke pundits or
Oh, sorry about that. Got a glitch here. Wow. Wow. Goodness gracious. I'm so sorry. Things were going well there. But now I can't hear a thing with Glenn Greenwald. Meanwhile, therefore, China unveils a military mega project. Satellite images reveal construction of the largest military hub on Earth, spanning over 1,000 acres. As satellite images reveal China's ambitious construction of the world's largest underground military command center near Beijing, global tensions escalate, prompting experts to scrutinize the implications of this unprecedented development for international security dynamics. Satellite images reveal China's construction. The development highlights China's strategic ambitions. The project incorporates advanced technological sophistication. Regional reactions vary. Countries reassessing their security strategies amid concerns over potential geopolitical tensions. China, in other words, is not lagging behind. They're catching up fast. Meanwhile, matter of 4 days, Pakistan Army, incapable of surviving beyond 96 hours before the mighty Indian forces, which are far more numerous, but apart from the Sikhs, are not very good fighters. Pakistan's ordnance factory, due to outdated production, global surge in demand would be under extreme pressure if a full-fledged war were to break out. India is preparing a strong response to avenge the false flag terror attack Pakistan's accused of committing that is said to have killed 27 Indian civilians, mostly tourists, in Kashmir. Since the fake, I'm declaring it to be, terror attack, tensions have been escalating between the two nations. India's taken a number of non-kinetic actions, including suspending the Indus Water Treaty, sending Pakistani nationals back to the country, reducing diplomatic staff, and downgrading the already scaled-down diplomatic engagements. Now, bear in mind, both of these nations are nuclear armed. India, around 180 nukes, Pakistan, 170. This all has to do with the Indus water rights. There's a treaty that divides it equally between India and Pakistan, but apparently Modi, the Prime Minister of India, has wanted to precipitate an incident with Pakistan to cut off their water rights. Get this, meanwhile, India gets a tap on the shoulder from China. What hasn't been considered here is that while Donald Trump sent a B-52 to India, what we have here is U.S. supporting India, but China supporting Pakistan. With major military buildup by both India and Pakistan for the past 2 weeks after a terrorist attack blamed on Pakistan slaughtered 26 Indian citizens in Kashmir, India just got a tap on the shoulder. China began a large live-fire military exercise, which just so happened to be taking place in the Himalayas near the Indian border. China backs Pakistan. Here's a video released by the People's Liberation Army showing parts of the exercise. An actual shooting war between Pakistan and India would likely not bode well to Pakistan, which is outnumbered, outgunned, out-tanked, out-artillered, and so on. But the real disastrous information about Pakistan came out today. Pakistan had been secretly arming Ukraine. It has so depleted its own inventory of 155 artillery shells. Pakistan now has only, get ready for this, 4 days' worth of artillery. A full-scale war were to break out. 4 days. The major league downside is that after they run out of artillery, Pakistan would be more likely forced to using its nuclear weapons. Perhaps that's why China is making its presence known. Better to avoid a shooting war before it starts than try to limit it once it does begin. Yes, more wisdom from China than we find from the United States. Meanwhile, Hal Turner. Because of the tariff situation, port traffic down 33% last week will drop to zero within days. Only 5 to 7 weeks inventory in warehouses. None of this is good. Gene Sikora, executive director of the Port of Los Angeles, appeared on Bloomberg and revealed the ongoing trade war has resulted in a 33% drop in ocean container ships entering the port last week.
I need somebody help, not just anybody help. You know I need someone help. When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone and I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind and open up the door. changed. A crowd of people stood and stared. They'd seen his face before. Nobody was really sure if he was from the House of Lords. I saw a film today, oh boy. The English army had just won the war. A crowd of people turned away. But I just had to.
Well, Vladimir Putin is saying he hopes that the Ukraine war isn't going to require the use of nuclear weapons. Moscow has enough force and resources to bring a special military operation in Ukraine to its logical conclusion, says Russia's president. Sooner than later. Putin on Sunday said he hopes there'll be no need for the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine. In an interview with Russian journalist Pavel Zarubin on an upcoming documentary, excerpts of which were shared by state media, Putin said his country has not yet needed to use such arms since the start of the Russian-Ukraine war. They, the West, wanted to provoke us. They wanted us to make mistakes. There was no need to use the weapon you just mentioned. I hope there will be no need. Yes, the sooner he ends this, the better. Meanwhile, Colonel McGregor talks about the necessity, the real possibility that Putin taking Kiev is a real possibility. Absolutely. I mean, this guy is so good. Meanwhile, Ukraine's desertion crisis just got worse. Who wants to go to the front line and be wiped out? Meanwhile, Russia is testing directed energy weapons over the Caucasus. Indeed. Fire jihad consumes Israel again. Israel's Hubas are terrified to connect the dots. In this timeless and munificent advice, it is this King Solomon, a giant among Judaism's wisest sages, said, "There is nothing new under the sun." 2 words never spoken. It is this timeless and munificent advice that one should expect the leadership of the Jewish homeland must abide by, most especially during wartime. Tragically, it's far from the case. In all honesty, it rarely is. First and foremost, stop pussyfooting around, call it what it is, fire jihad. Now that that's established, a brief historical look is a mandatory lesson. What he means by that is fire is being used to fight Israel. My impression had been it was the settlers themselves who started the fires in the West Bank, and they burned out of control. Meanwhile, Israel is going to an expanded Gaza offense, calling up more reservists. I think they want to call up 60,000 reservists for an all-out assault on Gaza. Israel is preparing to expand its military operation in Gaza, possibly within days, and will soon start calling up tens of thousands of reservists, according to a person familiar with the plans. The decision to broaden the ground assault follows a meeting of PM Netanyahu's Security Cabinet Friday. The stepped-up campaign would come as Bibi faces pressure at home and abroad to break a stalemate in the war with Hamas, which it waged for more than 18 months. But of course, really, it has been just a cover for slaughtering Palestinians. Meanwhile, journalist killing in Gaza has been described as deliberate, UN says on World Press Freedom Day. killing of journalists in the Gaza Strip in Israel is probably deliberate, and the Enclave is one of the deadliest places in the world for reporters, according to Adris Sungay, representative of the UN High Commission for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory. Sungay answered, and do agencies' questions about Israel targeting journalists in Gaza for World Press Day, May 3rd. Emphasizing journalists do an incredible job in covering events in Gaza, the occupied West Bank, and Palestinian territories, Sungay said that over 210 Palestinian journalists have been killed since the 7th of October, 2023. Over 210. Yes, and it's deliberate. Have no doubt about it. Meanwhile, Jeffrey Sachs uncovers
Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Lives in a dream, waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? All the lonely people.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network. Real news, real talk, real people. Because you can handle the truth.
Did you know?
Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, I say it's alright.
Well, The Atlantic had an article about Trump's tariff mess, and remember, The Atlantic is very unsympathetic to Trump. I think it's striking that Beijing is now indicating that it might be open to start talks about fentanyl. Addressing Trump team's gripes over China's role in fentanyl crisis could let both sides soften the trade stance. We find that on X, from the Wall Street Journal. What you need to understand about fentanyl, it's a human-made opioid used to treat severe pain. It's 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. The drug interacts with receptors in your brain to create feelings of pain relief, relaxation, contentment, and pleasure. What's safe for your doctor to give you fentanyl in a medical setting, some people abuse it, which can lead to an overdose. Fentanyl is in a class of drugs called opioids, which come from the opium poppy plant. While some opioids come directly from the plant, fentanyl is made in a lab by scientists using the same chemical structure. People sell fentanyl illegally as a powder, dropped onto blotter paper, put in eye droppers and nasal sprays, or as pills that look like other prescription opioids. Fentanyl can also be diverted. That's when the drug is prescribed by a doctor, but isn't used as directed or sold or given to someone else. A sharp increase in deaths from illegal fentanyl use started in 2005 through 2007. Then in 2011, both deaths from illegal fentanyl and police encounters with illegal fentanyl use rose significantly. The overdose rate has continued to rise in part because fentanyl is often mixed into or sold as other drugs. Because fentanyl is so strong, it takes only a tiny dose to cause death. Your doctor might prescribe fentanyl if you have severe pain due to cancer, nerve damage, serious injury, or major surgery. But it is a deadly drug. Meanwhile, get this. The Ugly Truth reports Waltz and Netanyahu held secret discussions about military strike against Iran behind Trump's back. The first thing to understand about all this is that contrary to conventional wisdom that pervades much of the analysis found in the alternative media and even the 9/11 truth movement, Donald J. Trump is not in Netanyahu's back pocket. He is not out to start World War III in order to please his master Bibi. But as too many experts maintain, if they were right, the U.S. would already be at war with Iran, Ukraine would be flushed with new cash and new weapons, and Israel would be given a free hand to engage in the anti-Gentile murder and mayhem that she is religiously committed to do according to the protocols of the elders of Zion, even the Torah. Yes. Well, that's really the $64 question, if you ask me. President Trump offers a grave warning as radical judges shamelessly sabotage his immigration agenda and the Supreme Court sits on its hands. Trump was in an understandably foul mood Saturday as radical left judges continue to sabotage his immigration agenda. That's because he knows America's future is bleak. If this continues and the Supreme Court does nothing, the situation could get drastic. As Gateway Pundit has reported, a federal judge Thursday issued a permanent injunction and banned the Trump admin from using the Alien Enemies Act to remove Venezuelan gang members and transport them to El Salvador. U.S. District Judge Fernando Rodriguez, a Trump appointee, called the president's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act unlawful. According to Judge Rodriguez, the EEA only applies when the U.S. is at war or under an armed attack. Tuesday, a race-baiting Biden judge in California decided to kneecap our brave border agents from arresting some of the most violent humans on earth and ignored a critical federal law in the process. U.S. District Judge General Thurston issued an injunction on Tuesday barring Customs and Border Protection in the Eastern District of California from stopping illegal immigrants without a warrant, proving that a person is a threat to flee before they can get a warrant. Wow, this really is hamstringing the effort. Meanwhile, here's a piece I regarded pure propaganda, the politicized mind, how the university lost its way. Frankly, I'm not aware of the universities losing their way except by the extent to which they may have gone woke. But this is not what they're addressing. Academia is once again in the news. President Trump's recent commitments address at the University of Alabama, where he said America's next chapter will not be written by the Harvard Crimson, but by you, the Crimson Tide, sounded a leitmotif of new Trump-inspired populism washing over the academic establishment. Trump's announcement he was seeking to remove Harvard's tax-exempt status sounded another. These days, whenever the public attention is roused by academia, the oculus of media scrutiny turns up references to my book, Tenured Radicals, first published more than 30 years ago, but subsequently expanded and updated repeatedly. Given the renewed interest in academic culture, I thought I'd adopt a few thoughts from the introduction to the most recent edition. This is a fellow named Roger Kimball, May 4th. Well, I'm not at all sure Roger's quite got it right, but I will tell you, in supporting or allowing protests by students of genocide in Gaza The universities are upholding their tradition and responsibility, academic freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Meanwhile, how did we get these vicious laws? Jared Taylor. Here he's talking about a situation where affirmative action and the like was compounded by a concept known as, diverse impact, disparate impact. The fact of the matter, this article is demonstrating, is that there are innate racial differences. I mean, it could be changed through evolution. That's my argument in the book, The Evolution of Intelligence, where the average IQ of blacks in the U.S. is around 85, that of whites 100, that you simply cannot presume they're equal, and that any disparities in their treatment are therefore a function of discrimination. That, however, has been the Democrat song and dance. I knew it was wrong from the first I encountered. Very, very disturbing. Very. So, we got to shake off the taboo of talking about racial differences and inabilities, and whether they're mental, whether they're physical, whether they're athletic. My presumption has been, if you look at the percentage of blacks in pro sports, where presumably they're hiring the best at those activities, they're predominantly black, suggesting blacks are a greater physical ability than whites. On the other hand, in intellectual endeavors, there's no doubt they're overwhelmingly white. And that's because whites have intellectual abilities that are substantially greater than blacks. So blacks are better at sports, whites are better at mental activities, It's all a function of evolution. If you want to read about it, if you want to follow up, check out The Evolution of Intelligence. Meanwhile, this is actually an article that complements what I reported in my opening story. How 21 trillion went missing without a trace. America's biggest financial coup explained, but we got it. We're back in the beginning. Underground cities for the wealthy and powerful, some 170 underground bases. Staggering. Staggering. Meanwhile, here's a piece why Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is now investigating Sandy Hook, among other issues. I think there's a great chance Tulsi is going to get to the bottom of it, and that Obama and Eric Holder may be hung out to dry. I certainly would welcome that outcome. Meanwhile, just in, Trump has posted an AI-generated image of himself as Pope. This is very, very strange. We got actually more than one photo. Pope Trump just canonized the Holy Cheeseburger. It's tremendous, folks. Best saintly snack, believe me, says Trump. So what in the world is going on here? We also have canonization of Elon Musk. Good photos there as well. A very, very peculiar what we got going on here. Needless to say, you put together AI, photoshopping, you can make anyone look like anyone. Here we have Trump posts picture of himself as Pope just a week after the funeral. Here's another with Musk. We got Trump as Pope, but we also have Elon Musk as Pope. And actually, I think in some ways, Musk looks even more popely than Trump. I mean, wow, what a situation. What are we to make of that? Meanwhile, Trump is being faulted for exaggerating the role of the U.S. military in World War II. Here's what Trump wrote that's being faulted. Many of our allies and friends are celebrating May 8th as Victory Day, but we did more than any other country by far in producing a victorious result in World War II. I'm hereby renaming May 8th as Victory Day for World War II and November 11th as Victory Day for World War I. We won both wars. Nobody was close in terms of strength, bravery, or military balance, but we never celebrate anything. You know, I believe I may, in fact, have actually covered this story yesterday, so no doubt we can return to it. Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly's hilarious spoof of the Blue Origin Girl Ride, Blonde Origin, zero gravity, zero clue on video. The Gateway Pundit has reported on the plastic surgery-obsessed celebrities and celebrity hangers-on, such as Gayle King, Lauren Sanchez, and Katy Perry, who took a leisurely flight into space. The female space tourists named themselves the Six Taking Up Space. The women rang a bell before boarding the capsule because all astronauts throughout history in various programs have their traditions. Although the space tourist flight by Blue Origin lasted only 11 minutes, Katy Perry kissed the ground after landing as though she were one of the two astronauts abandoned in space by the Biden-Harris admin who had to be rescued by Elon Musk's SpaceX. Think about it. How could they have been, stalled in space for 6 months and had the food supply to survive? How would the human waste have been processed? One of the real tells about the fake space, moon program is that about 10 years ago, NASA asked for assistance with its space poop problem, explained that the then diapers for waste they supposedly had were only good for 14 hours, and they asked for help from the public in solving the problem, offering a $50,000 reward. Well, if you stop and think about it, when you're talking 20, 30 years after we allegedly went to the moon and back, where those trips took 7 or 8 days, you realize raising the question is an admission that all the claims that we went to the moon and back were nothing but a gigantic pile of space poop. Here's more. While most Americans struggle to care for their families, Gayle King arrogantly lectured critics of the stunt, asking, "Have y'all been to space?" Gayle King just compared herself to Alan Shepard, the first American to travel into space. The ego of these women is stratospheric. Megyn Kelly and her team poke fun at the spoiled celebrities with her spoof, Blonde Origin, Zero Gravity, Zero Clue. Narrated by Mark Halpern and Link Lauren, Megyn and her team spent twice as much time in weightlessness as the gals from Blue Origin. Wow. And of course, it's all reflective of the fact that the actual moon landing was a total fraud. Really unbelievable. Not authentic. Not for real. Nothing but a gigantic deception. So, think about it. After all, we would have had to succeed in passing through the Van Allen radiation belt, which would have required 5 or 6 feet of lead, making the space vehicles too massive to get off Earth. For those who harbor any lingering doubts, moreover, they're settled by the demonstration that had we arrived on the moon's surface, we could never have returned. it? We had this giant rocket, right, to get up to the moon. But what did we have to get back? This little tiny ascent vehicle? I mean, it's ridiculous. Why would we have had the fuel to traverse 250,000 miles? I mean, it's just ludicrous. More proof. The Earth is like 55 times more massive than Moon. If you were looking from the Moon at Earth, it would envelop your entire visual field because it's so much more enormous. But what did we get? NASA claimed photographs of Earth from Moon look just like Moon from Earth. It was easy just to change the appearance of the Moon to make it look more like Earth, or of Earth to make it look more like Moon. It was trivial. It was ridiculous. Meanwhile, let me share with you that this fellow, Victor Hugo Vaca Jr., has been assailing me and my colleagues with hundreds and hundreds of attack videos, hundreds and hundreds. They are vicious, they are nasty, they make all kinds of ludicrous accusations, but they're everywhere. If you just go on the internet anywhere and you put in my name, one of these nasty videos is going to pop up. I've got to take legal action to do it. But my financial resources, having been in court all these years, are very, very limited. So I'm appealing for assistance. Anyone who wants to help me fight this, and it's going to carry it back to BitChute in Rumble, because in spite of it, repeated protests and formal demands to cease and desist, they are still allowing these videos to stand. I believe there's a whole lot that's going to take place here, but I need financial assistance to do it. If anyone can consider throwing a few bucks into the pot, I only need a couple grand, really, a couple grand, I think ought to do it. Visit GiveSendGo.com/fundingFetzer, and I've updated the site. So there are active links there that will explain to you exactly what's going on. There's a link there such that if you went on to BitChute and put in Victor-Hugo, Jim Fetzer, you're going to see hundreds and hundreds of videos before your very eyes. And these aren't kind and gentle. These are nasty and vicious. The malice is overwhelming. And I have the suspicion they're attacking me because they're worried that I'm going to expose Sandy Hook. Remember, I'm back in court. I'm moving to have my case reversed. I have a mountain of evidence. We're in the very last round there. They're putting up a desperate fight, but they're worried they might lose. I think these are preemptory strikes to assassinate my character so that anything with my name attached will be a turnoff.